Welcome back to the High Performance Herd. Today, we're lucky to have with us Justin Newell, the Chief Executive Officer, CEO for Inform North America. Justin, welcome.
David, thank you so much. Appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, glad to have you. We had a conversation, I think, a week ago or now, just to get a little bit of background to you and Inform, and was certainly impressed with kind of what you've done there, your evolution as leader, and the impact that you've had on that organization. So I always start with kind of what drew you to leadership. What was the origin story of, man, I want to lead, I want to build something bigger than myself? What was it for you, Justin?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know that I've asked myself that before. When we had the conversation last time, it made me kind of dig in a little bit. And I think for me personally, I think it started, when I was a kid, certainly, probably for many, you watch your parents. I watched my father be successful in business. I watched him take on pretty large roles from a business perspective, had large teams of people. I watched the way that he grew personally, and I watched the way that he helped others grow. And I think from then, that point in time in my life, I started to envision myself wanting to at least kind of follow in his footsteps, doing something along those lines. I've always been a pretty organized person. So, when it comes to teams and collaborations, I wouldn't say I find myself just immediately jumping to the front and saying, hey, I want to lead this team. It's more of I feel like the organizer. I feel like someone who brings people together, who tries to kind of get people to collaborate in a certain way. And so I think from a leadership perspective, that's where it started. And when I got into business after I got out of college, got into business my first time, went to work for a genuine parts company, Nap Auto Parts, and I immediately for 2 years got put into a management training program. And that was not 2 years of, hey, how am I going to lead people? How am I going to do certain things? It was 2 years of, you will do everything in this entire organization. You will sweep stockroom floors. You will drive delivery trucks. You will work the line and load trucks. You will work in accounts payable, receivable. You'll ride with the sales team. You'll do everything. And in 2 years, you get out and then they make you a manager. And I think what's interesting is when you're young and you're in management, you already have that thing. I'm going to go out and set the world on fire. I'm going to do all these great things. But maybe if you don't have the right coaching, you don't take the time to listen, learn,
Mm.
understand, respect the people within the organization at every level, from the person that's stocking the shelves to the sales team that probably appears like they're out partying every day. And I think once you get an appreciation for everybody's role within the organization first, then you're better set up to be a leader. And so I say that's where it started to kind of turn for me a little bit.
Awesome. If you give the audience just a glimpse into kind of your career progression, early days up until Inform, and just give us here's what I've done, here's what's happened. There's kind of
Yeah, so been with Inform about 7 years. We're a hybrid AI, artificial intelligence digital decision making company based out of Germany. I've seen, I would say in 7 years, when I started, we were a global company of about 700 folks, and I'm responsible for North America. But just in that time, the company on a total has grown almost doubled by the number of people. So we've seen double-digit employee growth almost every year in 7 years. And obviously, you talk to a lot of leaders. I know you do this podcast. You've talked to others. When you start getting into that double-digit, approaching 20+% increase in employees, you already have a pretty strong task at hand. How do you onboard them? How do you keep your culture? How do you do these things? Pandemics set everybody back a little bit, because if you were a company with a great culture, it was easy. You brought them on site, you got everybody together, you had onboarding, maybe classes, and you had a team member, you went to lunch. And when the pandemic hit, you didn't have all this. And if your culture didn't stand out before, it certainly wasn't going to stand out during the pandemic. So I think what I've seen in 7 years is we've had a lot of growth. We've brought a lot of new products to North America. Our team here has grown substantially. Our product, our revenue, all the things that you're hoping are going to grow have grown pretty fast, and we've become a global company. We used to be what I would call a German-based company trying to operate in a couple small offices internationally, and now we're getting that global feel of, hey, we've got 30 or 40 different nationalities working for us, and a lot of complex things. German can't always be the main language when you have an all employee meeting. Maybe you need to have it in English. So there's a lot of growing pains that companies go through as
Yeah.
they try to become a global company.
So before we dive more into Inform, give us kind of the hey early career climb to Inform. What was the path for you?
Early within my career here, just at Inform, kind of how did things go?
No, no, no. Like your early working career up until Inform. Kind of what was your
Yeah.
career path to
No,
take
for
this
sure.
role?
Yeah. So again, I spent about 6 years at genuine parts company, moved quite a bit. They were very infamous for moving people every 2 years. If you were on kind of the fast track. So I moved every 2 years to different states, took on new responsibilities, and really was going in the right direction there. And in about 2000, one of my mentors went over to Porsche Cars North America. And of course, being an automotive guy, it's fun being on the parts side. But if you have a chance to go to work for Porsche, that's pretty cool. And so I did, went over and immediately got sent to Germany within less than a year, helped lead some international projects, SAP implementation projects in the after sales world. Came back, was head of procurement for a number of years. I think that really started to give me a much broader understanding of everything that went on within Porsche. And, some days I'm surprised I have any hair left at all. And other days, I look back and think, wow, that was really good experience if you do procurement the right way. And then had a chance to be a part of and help lead all the vehicle logistics group for North America, which is ocean, quality, everything related to that new car getting from the factory in Germany all the way to the individual's hands at a dealership, and then to the end customer that can enjoy the car. So kind of a big role there. And then from there, I didn't plan to leave there. Just kind of happened. Went to work for a very high end carrier that moved cars. Also, is that a 50-plus-year-old company, privately held, one individual. So a lot of bringing what I guess I'd learned in leadership into that company because nobody was really had ever come in from the outside. So that was, rewarding yet challenging for 4 years. Wasn't had no intentions of leaving there, and then got a knock on the door from a recruiter, and here I am at a software company. And the unique thing, I probably didn't stand out immediately as far as, hey, this guy's sold software, he's a perfect fit, all those things. But what they quickly aligned is he has the experience and the business operational experience in the areas where we want to place software. And that's what Inform, I think, does well is they hire people that can immediately come in the aviation industry. For example, you see the picture of the Delta plane, which is a customer of ours. They can immediately come in and say, hey, you don't need to explain, the world of being out on the tarmac and all the above and blowing services. You just have to explain to me what's specific about your airline and what are we doing with baggage handling or what are we doing with dispatching people to a gate. And I think that's where Inform kind of excels, is they hire people with good experience.
So we talked about this in our earlier conversation a little bit that many will look at that as an odd transition. Hey, I pretty much was in automotive prior to this, and then I moved to a AI software company. You've highlighted it, but talk about the selection process, how they came to choose you in kind of the interview process, what was important. You've highlighted it, but I'd love to hear more about that story.
Yeah, so during that process, obviously we have a management board that consists of about 10 SVPs, and they're kind of the internal board of the company. That's the individuals that run each of our verticals. So aviation, finished vehicle logistics, construction materials, production planning. And so what had happened is I had interviews with about 7 or 8 of those people beforehand. First, the CEO of the entire company is the one that hired me. But in those conversations, what was unique is, of course, an automotive guy. We already had a division that was doing automotive inbound logistics. We had a division that was in the process of really building up the finished vehicle logistics side of the business. We had construction material dispatch optimization. And not that I'd been in construction materials, but I'd run a large trucking company with 400 plus trucks with all the same problems, driver issues, on time delivery, visibility, trying to optimize your fleet. And so as we went through those number of those conversations, and some of them were multiple with the same person, I think I slowly went from being, hey, this guy doesn't have software experience in selling enterprise software, to being the guy that they're like, yeah, but this guy he knows the industry, and he's got the connections in the industry that we need. And the first focus was really automotive because that's my background, and I didn't have to get too involved in aviation. And we already had a pretty strong footprint here in aviation, and since then we've just continued to grow, with North America being probably 30% of our overall global aviation business.
Awesome. So, eventually selected in that process, you take over as head of North America. Talk about kind of early days. Hey, I come in, this is what the organization is, here's what I found in North America. I mean, clearly they had a presence um, rest of the world, and talk about what was in place in the US, what you found, what the early day challenges were.
Yeah, early day challenges for me is, we were operating obviously very small. I think the visibility of the company, they had a number of folks that had helped us grow in aviation. So if you asked around in aviation, people knew us. When I first started going out to conferences, people knew me from my days at Porsche, at Reliable. I was well known in the automotive conference world, but nobody really knew Inform. I mean, we had one person on our team that was out there visiting, doing things, but we weren't a known commodity. So it was kind of a combination of how do we get Inform more visibility as a company, and how do we get people to understand that Inform isn't either just an aviation company, they're not an inbound company. How do we present the complexity of what we do against maybe some of the other competitors that we play against? And so I would say for the first 5 years, that was a huge focus, is really getting visibility, looking at search engine optimization, looking at the things you need to look at to say, hey, are we even appearing on anybody's radar here? It's great that you get known through prospect or through prospective customers, or reference customers, white paper case studies, but you've got to get known in other ways. And I think that's what I focused on early. And then in building our team, it was a lot of administrative, marketing, business development early on. We've now gotten into project management, technical consultation, and a lot of other things. We don't do the development here in North America, but yeah, the team's grown substantially when it comes to we've got to deliver locally, with support from Germany, and that's really the best model.
So, I hear in that story, hey, you had the traditional entrepreneurial awareness, scale, growth challenges that many will face. As you look back on that time and go, what was key to the success of the team? What was?
Key to success for the team itself, or key to success for the company here in North America?
Well, for this North American growth expansion success, because clearly you've built a more known brand across multiple disciplines, and when you started, that wasn't the case.
Yeah,
So this is every early entrepreneur like, hey, I got some great idea, I got this thing, and you're super excited about it, but no one in the world knows about it. So you got to go figure out how to grow awareness, scale, grow. That's always the first kind of part of business. And so
100%.
I'm curious in your reflection, like, well, what allowed us to do that? What was key to that success? What did we
Yeah, I think,
focus on that won?
yeah, no, that's good. I think what helped us in the automotive space was the first thing was to get a customer, and I think it was VW Group, and they took us for a project. So that was the first true North American customer, and that kind of woke everybody up to, if a major company like VW is taking it, now they start to take notice. And then over the past few years, we've won pork processors, like Pasha, like Amports, Crawley. We've got a massive Ford project. For a long time, being a German-based company, we could never really chip away at the big three, trying to get into the big three, because they always use either local Detroit providers or American-based providers that are based out of the U.S. And but now we've broken through that, and so I think some of those early wins, it's like people always say, if you have a referenceable customer in any one of your verticals you're in, you immediately have relevance. And it's still amazing in the software world. I think you will have a presentation to a customer, no matter how well that presentation goes. It's just like nature. Well, can you tell us who's got a similar implementation that you could tell us about? And it could be a European based one, and that should hold weight, but it doesn't always. So
Yeah.
you've got to get relevance in the market you're trying to grow in.
So what I hear in that is, hey, we had to do good work. We had to grow and scale. As you think back to that period and go, well, who did I have in place? How did we sell it? It sounds like Germany supports implementation, but you still got to go convince and sell, grow, go from one account to the next, kind of grow our referenceable good work. Was there any more to it than that, or is just like, no, that's what we kind of followed that path?
Oh, no, there's a lot more to it than that. I think we had some painful discussions at times because, as you can imagine, they were growing. This market was starting to show that it could grow at a pretty steady pace. And I think a couple times there were conversations of, well, this global OEM, let's take Vietnamese like VinFast that was coming out of everywhere, and we managed to land that customer. And there was a lot of conversations of, man, maybe we should walk away. Maybe if we can't handle this right now. And I think when you're scaling, you have some really tough conversations from a business development, from a revenue growth perspective. Leadership's always like, put your foot on the gas. Others within the organization are saying, hey, we need to be careful. We need to right size our teams. We can't burn our teams out. We've got to be careful. And, in certain divisions, that one particular, we went through what I guess the team coined the year of normalization, which was let's not do a lot of sales. Let's slow down a little bit. Let's right size. Let's see if they can catch up, give them a breath. But I think what came out of it is we took our foot off the sales pedal for about a year. And then at the end of the year, I guess my question or into the next year was, okay, does the team feel rejuvenated? Did we catch up? Did we feel better? And kind of the cumulative feeling was no. And I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
then all we really did was just impact our pipeline. That's really all we did. So there was a lot of those early conversations, and I think we're in a much better position now.
Yeah, I mean, Justin, I always point to in both organizations that I've worked for, meaning I led, and those who I help. Um, I do a lot of work with personality, and what you find is that the world, from a personality standpoint, is cut in half, and half want to drive momentum, and the other half want to drive quality. And you elegantly talked about that. People are selling, go, well, I want to go sell more. The people that have to support, implement, do the work, and drive a quality aspect are always going, well, don't add more. I got more than I can already do. And that the best organizations on the planet find how to manage that tension. You've talked about it here, where you kind of do this yo-yo a little bit, like, hey, we need to slow down, and you sound like, and I'm curious, in hindsight, do you go, no, we shouldn't have?
I think we probably could have taken a little bit different approach, and this is just being the completely transparent, side of me. I would have much rather kept the pipeline conversations going, and it would have been easier to get to the point where you had a customer say, "We're interested, and we maybe want to sign an agreement with you," and then say, "Hey, we could implement in a year." That's not ideal, but that's where we're at right now. Versus the just complete step back and not have that conversation, and now that conversation went somewhere else for 5 years, and you don't get a chance to get back on their plate again for 5 or 6 years. So I think that's kind of the lesson that I would have learned out of that whole process.
And love that answer, because I think many get trapped in this, I have to do one or the other. And you go, well, no, I can be present in kind of the momentum conversations and tee it up like, well, until we have a signed contract, I can't even talk about start date.
Hmm.
There's that conversation, which is, oh, okay, well, now we're ready to get forward or move forward. Great. Then here's where we can fit you into our already, what sounds like, filled capacity. And yet then that demonstrates to the potential customer as well, like, well, these guys are killing it, they're doing good work, so it's not like they're not desirable. And so there's always this tension, and I think you've pointed to the best way to handle it is live in tension. Which is those two teams going, well, no, what makes us a little more comfortable but not complacent on the quality side, because we got to continue to add clients and have conversations and grow the business.
Yeah.
There's the old adage, like, if not growing, you're dying. And I'm not sure I ascribe to that, but there's clearly, we need to be thinking, those who drive momentum, that there's momentum.
Yeah, and
Um,
we can't, on the business development side, we can't even cheat. Some companies they have a sales team built around people doing demos, and it's all sales, it's all pre-sales, demoing. We actually have delivery teams doing the demo. So we actually have people that are in projects every day. So the really positive side is when the customer's like, "Hey, give me a real world what happened when you had to tie something together, do this implementation, do this integration." That person could be like, yeah, 100%. I could tell you exactly how it goes. I've done 20 or 30 of these integrations. I know how they go. That's the positive side. The bad side is that the salesy side of that individual maybe doesn't exist. because they're too busy. Like, I'm overwhelmed. I got 5 projects right now. So the answer that they might give when you just want to give the customer a little easy, yes, we can do it, they might be like, I don't know that we can, or it might be 9 months to try and develop that piece out. And from a development perspective, that little piece inside you is going, oh, please don't answer it that way,
Yeah, got
because
it.
you're trying to get the customer.
Yeah, awesome. That's helpful. If you look at kind of it's about 7 years that you've been there, right? Is that right? In that 7 years, if you look back and go, here's what I'm most proud of that you've accomplished, your team has done, what leaps out to you?
I think probably what I'm most proud of is that, again, when I got here, we were all aviation. Everybody knew we were aviation. Now there's probably 3 or 4 other verticals, finished vehicle logistics, automotive, construction material logistics, that now everybody knows who Inform is. We're considered thought leaders in those industries. We're on panels, we're speaking, we're at major events, we're recognized, and we still have more to go. We still have verticals that operate in other parts of the world that don't operate here yet. So my idea is to still get those. And the other part is that, if we look back 7 years ago, our team, we were mostly business development, really didn't have any capabilities to execute a project, do consultation, do project management, do some of the customer integration work. And now we've got that local ability to do that. And if I look back when I was head of procurement at Porsche, and if I was outsourced or trying to find a software supplier, and they were German, that's probably not a good comparison, because one German company using another German company, not a big deal. But if I'm a North American based company and I'm going to use a German software company that has really no footprint here, doesn't have an office, doesn't have a team of people doing the integration work or the project related work here locally, you've got to think, okay, are they going to be here for me? Are they going to exist? How tough is it going to be to implement this project if I don't have a local person? And that's what my drive was, is we've got to be local, and we've got to have North American based people sitting here doing North American based projects.
Yeah, awesome. From a scale perspective, what were some of your big challenges in growing into those verticals, finding people? I mean, whatever comes as part of what were the biggest challenges?
The biggest challenges I think early on was, of course, finding people that, like any organization, finding quality people that maybe you didn't have to start from scratch. They'd already either done some software work, they've been involved in projects, they kind of had a mentality for it. If you could get them from an industry where they already came in and maybe knew automotive, that was a plus. And then I think it was also getting the buy-in, because you've got people sitting in Germany that maybe they own some of these budgets, and it's their mentality was always up, just add more people to Germany, add more people to Germany. So to get them to say, no, we need to start adding more people to the US market. We need to start putting people in Chile. We need to put people in Portugal, for development. We need to start opening this up. Those are not easy conversations, but now that the company has seen the growth and seen what can be accomplished by doing it that way, now I think the sky's the limit. Now everybody's much more open to collaborating globally and figuring out what's the best thing for our customers.
And Justin, in that pursuit of talent, we'll call like, hey, I had to find more talent, bring it to the US. Talk about some of the things that you've done that drove success and some of yeah, this didn't go as well as I wish it would have in terms
Yeah,
of
we've
this search
we've
for talent.
always to try and secure talent. We've played with the recruiting world like everybody has. I was brought to Inform by a recruiter, and so there are those cases. Some recruiters will put as many people at it, they don't get paid until they land the right person, and they get paid a percentage of the person's salary. Some it's like, hey, I served up 4, you interviewed 4, I get this number. Based on serving up 4. We've used a lot of LinkedIn technology. That's something I've used across multiple organizations I've worked for, at least from a professional perspective. It may not work for recruiting drivers. Remember when I was at Reliable, it was like Craigslist. They're like, no, that's where you advertise for drivers. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. But that's where you got them. Or techs, diesel technicians. That's where you found them. But with us, it was finding the right people like anybody else. And I would be lying if I said that every single person we hired worked out perfectly. Certainly if we hired, let's say we had a 15% failure rate. I don't know what other people's failure rate is, but we probably had a 10 to 15% failure rate where we hired people, got them in the position, or went through that process and realized, wow, this was a total mess. And many times it wasn't like I did it by myself, or maybe another leader hired them and I interviewed them as well. So it was always one of those, you had to look at each other and go, well, cumulatively, we all had a miss here. I don't know what we did. And I think early, if we go now back to, and I hate talking about the pandemic because it's so far removed now, but there was a lot more of that virtual, not have a conversation. And a couple of these people, probably we barely even had them face to face. And I've just learned that even if it's the very last thing you do, you got to have a face to face. Make sure the person can show up on time to a building at a location, make sure they come presentable, make sure that hopefully they're early 5 minutes, do all these things. And I think companies probably hire people virtually, didn't see that part. And then all of a sudden you hire the person and you're like, wow, this was a big mistake.
I mean, it's a big part of our world, but I'll echo. I just had something the other day, Justin, where I had met the CEO, I think 9 years ago, maybe, and met him in person, did a lot of work, and then that my relationship is scaled there, but it's all been virtual. And I'm in Texas today, and met his team in Texas, many of them for the first time. Yet I've had 3 years of conversations with them on the screen, so we get used to we can operate this way, but there's no substitute for connect, see each other, and break bread, all the things that traditional humans have done. So you talked
Absolutely.
about kind of that, hey, we had early success, we found talent. Were you doing anything outside of I'll call it interviewing, recruiting? Did you do any sort of assessments? What does the company believe there? How have you kind of tried to whittle away at what real talent is?
Yeah, I think we did some, market. We probably looked at the market a little bit. We probably looked at some market studies, as far as talent and labor. Certainly, we were looking at reading a lot of stuff, looking at Glassdoor, trying to figure out, one where we've seen outside as a positive company. And I think if I think about one other thing that we did that I think was probably really proved the best is I networked. I networked with other leaders that I knew from Porsche, from other companies I worked for. And I remember I picked up the phone one time. I still to this day am very good friends with the CIO of Porsche North America. And I was like, hey, do you have any young talent, anywhere from interns to that you just can't retain? They want to stay with you, but you can't keep them. And he's like, you know what? That's a good question. I do. So I was like, well, hey, send them my way. And so we hired a couple of people that way. And sure enough, those two people are still here doing a tremendous job. And I think networking within your network to see who's got great talent that can't keep that great talent.
Yeah, I mean, I always use the metaphor. It's like trying to fill a baseball team. Like I got to be looking for talent everywhere. I got to be talking about it. I have to be kind of scouring who I know, and this is a brilliant way to go at it. So clearly, you scale the team, you bring on more talent. If you look at the kind of other early success to scale, it sounds like, hey, we brought on new talent, we started to go into new markets, we started to do good work. As you think about that phase of growth, like, hey, I started to change the team, it sounds like, and we started to change our performance. What was key to the performance change? Doing good work was leaning on Germany. What kind of helped you guys find that early success in terms of delivering?
Yeah, I think one thing that was definitely critical for us being a German-based company, we had probably one point, probably six expats that came over here from Germany. And what one, it was an opportunity for them. If they hadn't been here before, it was a good opportunity for them to come live abroad for a few years, to experience, North America, to do things. And the other thing that it really brought that was vitally important, at least a number of those folks, is that they helped onboard and train some of the local talent that we brought on board, but not just train them, they actually helped them learn the ropes of what goes on in Germany. They helped them, determine like, hey, if you've got a problem, here's all the different resources that you can go to in Germany. Here's who you can ring up. Here's who you can send a Teams message to. And without that, I think that would have caused so much longer of a curve for us to get some people up to speed. And that mentoring process was huge. And we still have expats that are here, but I think that was really pivotal in helping us get up to speed quicker.
And Justin, you and I talked. I work for a German company, so I understand this is in a way that I can for that German company. But I'm curious, that expat move and kind of next, I'll call it evolution of performance, driven by Germany, driven by you, a combination of both. What kind of drove that? Man, we want to have uh, supplemented help in the U.S. Because when I heard it, I'm like, well, yeah, they know how to navigate the system. They know who to. They literally go, well, I sat in Germany. I know how to do this.
Yeah. So what's interesting, because I've obviously worked for two German companies, the one I work for now and Porsche, the one I worked for 14 years. If I talk about Porsche, it was driven out of Germany. They just wanted to keep inserting more German-based folks into key roles in North America, which could be a little frustrating for Americans sometimes. That was more their approach. And they also felt like, hey, if I've got this person I really trust, they're in that role, maybe it's a financial role, I'm going to get straight 100% answers all the time. And with this company, completely different. It's a combination of one, finding the right individual that wants to come do the assignment. Two, finding a manager or someone at a higher level in Germany that says, hey, I want to grow this person. I want to really grow them and send them internationally for a few years and let them learn so much more globally. And then three, my input, which is it's the right person, it's the right job, and they're coming here for the right reason. And so I think, it's a costly exercise to bring somebody over, put them on an E1 visa, and have them here for a number of years. So I think you've got to have the people here for the right reason, and to say, hey, I'm just coming over to come over or whatever. And when you go through the immigration process, we've got an immigration attorney that does a wonderful job for us. You've got to be bringing people that technically can't be hired here in North America. So they've got to bring some special skill set that an American employee couldn't just immediately pick up and do. They've got either 3 years or 4 years in a really technical environment in your systems, something that's going to add immediate value to your organization.
Um, and I lived through some of this with Roche and Beringer Mannheim. It was originally a German company and then bought by a Swiss company. But what was clear to me in it is both ways, because we had expats going, back and forth, is that both sides of the pond improve. This helps Germany. It helps you. Did you see that, or do you continue to see that there's benefit to both sides?
100%. I mean, a couple of the people that have gone back now that were over here, one young gentleman we just had here, he really would still be here. He was here for about 3 years and started dating someone back in Germany. Couldn't bring the dog over. The dog was quite old. So, but he's told me multiple times. I just saw him a couple of weeks ago, and he's like, door's not closed. He's like, he really loved Atlanta. He loved being here. Young scene. I mean, Atlanta's really become an international city in a lot of ways. And so his viewpoint now, going back over and talking to all the other team members, he brings a completely different perspective. In fact, as much that we have every year, we have this huge Summerfest event over in Germany. It'll be in June this year. And we do a lot of workshops. We do a lot of cultural speaking, a 45-minute workshop where people from different entities come in and they kind of present these global projects, or they talk about what are the wins. And he got to present on one last year and kind of present a German's perspective from living in North America. And so I think that's very valuable. We all have these stereotypes. I served many years ago at Porsche. I got to do their first Globolution. They had a project where it was global international management training, and you come together for a week. You do all this breaking of bread and learning the difference between German, Italian, Japanese, American, and all these things. And then after you've done all this great things for about a week, then in the last minute and by design, I think they did a little. The very first one was rough, but it was, we're going to come in and throw a project at you that you're going to all together have to manage internationally. And within hours, you're going to have to pick a steering committee. You're going to have to pick a project manager, trying to get buy-in, and depending on who had what bandwidth going on, because you had your own regular job. I was in the move in the process of moving to Germany. Um, it's almost like all that team building that you did for the week got broken apart in about 3 hours.
It's funny. I
So
lived through a very similar experience with Roche. They went through a process with a global consultant that they did venturing, they called it, and they same thing. They bring 20 people together from all over the world at Roche, you'd go to a castle in Switzerland or wherever and do all this, and then it's like, well, now you got to work on this entrepreneurial project in your spare time with these people, and
100%.
it was tough, And there, not only did you work on it, you were presenting a case to get more money. So you would go in these 90 to 180-day cycles of, well, will we get funded? And many in your group are like, no, I don't want to get funded. Like, I want this to stop. So you had some of that dynamic where it's like, no, this was great and it was fun, but it's run its course. And there were a handful like, no, this is a great idea that's going to help my local market. Like, we need this project to press forward, and so all that dynamic is interesting.
100%.
So you found success. You're here today. The team is performing, and it sounds like a much better way. If you look and go, well, what's at the essence of our success? What would you say is there? What's behind what's happened?
I think the essence of informed success, and probably will always continue to be, has been for almost 60 years, is we support people. We support people from the bottom up. Executive leadership. It's certainly, I guess your definition of lead or leader is kind of all dependent, but it really comes down to, what do your people think of you? Do your people consider you to be a leader? Do they view you as being the one that they would go to as a leader? If you're just constantly pulling and saying, hey, we're going in this direction and that's where we're going and you got to follow me, we really try to give people the autonomy to do their jobs. We give them flexibility. We give them everything they need to grow as a person and grow within their job, and to make themselves a better employee, and to give themselves, I guess, more meaning to what they do every day. And I still think that that plays a huge role in our success as a company. And because culture wins, it always wins. I mean, everywhere you go, if you talk about why people leave companies, they don't leave companies. They usually leave bad cultures and they leave bad managers. And if it wasn't for a bad manager or bad culture, people would probably stay in those companies forever. So I think that that continues to help us. And I think the fact that we still think, we don't act in startup mode, but we still, each division has its own autonomy to do its own thing, almost like an independent company. And so we still try to keep very nimble. We've got very low bureaucracy, don't have a lot of policy procedures and forms getting in everybody's way all day long. And I think those are probably the things that make us still what we are today.
If you look forward next 3 to 5 years, we'll look at that window and go, here's what's critical for your team in North America. What's most important? What's critical? What do you need to accomplish?
I think over the next few years, if when I started, we had some divisions where I don't think we really had probably a viable competitor. We might have had aviation, we might have had a competitor. Finished vehicles, no competitors. Now, one by one, if we're in 10 different verticals, we're getting some competition in each of those verticals. You're getting a lot of startup companies that are coming in. Everybody's talking about artificial intelligence. Everybody's talking about all these big buzzwords. So we have to talk about them a little bit as well. And I think, we have to start to probably defend our position a little bit more. I think we have to make sure we keep our hands on our customers very close. I mean, we have to have those engagements, those positive engagements. We have to support. We can't fall asleep. I can't remember if it was Toyota many years ago. I think he said, if you're not constantly looking over your shoulder, then you're doing something wrong. You better be looking in the rearview mirror all the time. And we're not that big, but I think, we're starting to get into that mode that if all your competition is kind of coming after you in certain areas, that's got to mean you're doing something right. And so I think over the next 3 years, we have to continue to determine this big AI wave. How are we using it? We're no different than anybody else. We've been doing machine learning since the 90s and all these, but we've got to find ways to be very transparent, explainable about the way we're using artificial intelligence. We've got to make sure we still set ourselves apart. And I think still the big part is that it's because we came out of a university setting from the very beginning in operations research, we're not a super salesy company. So we're all about partnership, long term, delivering, Delta since 2008, United Airlines since 1990. Those partnerships don't last if you don't do the right thing for the customer.
Yeah. And as you think about your leadership team, what will be critical?
I think what I find becomes more critical each day is the workforce is some of us are starting to age up a little bit more. We have to continue to understand what drives the younger generation, what's important to them. I remember my sister, she was working at Citrix for a while, and she was partly responsible for the campus, and she was talking about all the snacks and the food and everything they were going through monthly, and just blew my mind, completely blew my mind. But the younger generation and the people that will be your future leaders, what's important to them may have not been anywhere near or may have been quite different than what you and I thought was important back in the day. Work life balance, the amount of vacation, the amount of flexibility to work remotely at home some days, all these are huge factors. So I think you got to keep your finger on the pulse with what the so-called movers and shakers, what's going to be important to them in the future.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you think about success 3 to 5 years from now, what will determine whether or not you guys have been successful 5 years from now?
Yeah, I think if when I started, if I said that the team was double the size in 3 to 5 years, that might have been my answer a long time ago. That wouldn't be my answer today. My answer would be if our revenue is maybe double, maybe we're on the right track, from where it is today. If we are known, let's say that we're known as a leader in 3 or 4 of the verticals here today, if we're now known as one of the leaders in 7 or 8 different verticals that we currently operate in the next 3 to 5 years, I would consider that a win. And I think if we continue to have our existing customers reference us to other people and be willing to be referenceable customers to be, when we have an aviation every year, we have a user conference where airlines, ground handlers, everybody comes, and they actually get up on stage and they're willing as an airline to participate in the conversation and talk about what they've been able to achieve with the help
Nice.
of our team, our software. And I think for me, that's the true win. If you've got customers that say, I am 100% willing to talk about what you helped us accomplish, and it's an open door policy about most conversations, then I think we're winning.
Awesome. If you think about the challenge of building a leadership team, what's been the biggest challenge for you? So different than running the company or having it, but instead just leading a group of leaders. So kind of the captain of captains. What's been kind of the challenge there for you?
I think what's a little bit can be challenging at times is that if it was up to you, you would quickly just say, "Hey, I want to install these 5 individuals, and we're gonna, set up a new structure, and we're gonna move forward." But obviously, business has to support that. Still being a relatively nimble team, you can't always hire somebody when you want to, and we have a lot of people over the last few years that I know through my network where they're like raising their hand saying, "Love to join your team," and we just haven't had the right fit to at that point in a position at that level. So that always gets a little bit frustrating because you're like, okay, there's another miss that we could have had, but we're just not ready for it. Or maybe they brought something to the table that we just don't do currently. So that's part of it. But I think, what's interesting too is we have management individuals in our team of all various different ages, could be 20 to 25 years difference in age. And again, trying to manage the different expectations and what I guess management means to each individual or what leadership means to each individual. We've joined a few different things like the Institute. I'm in a CEO group here locally in North America where we give back to entrepreneurship of students. And it helps a lot because you get a lot of little tidbits and packets that you get to take away about leadership. And I'm constantly trying to feed all the things that I think are relevant to the team, feed it back to them and let them be part of that learning experience. And of course, you can bring consultants like yourself in to talk to the team. And sometimes it's not about what the CEO says to the team. Sometimes it's an independent perspective brought in that's actually the most valuable.
Which is funny because you could have been saying the same thing, for the last 3 years. It's just not heard the same way
Oh yeah,
often.
but the minute you come in and say the same thing, they're like, "Oh,
Yeah.
this is brilliant." It's like,
I always talk about leading and parenting is kind of the same thing. It's like, okay, you don't want to listen to your parents. You listen to someone else. You're like, okay, I don't want to listen to my leader either. But there's a ton of similarities. As you think about kind of the success you've had in this role at Inform, and look back and go, here's what I'd want to share with other entrepreneurs that are on a similar journey. What's the couple tidbits or thing that you go, yeah, everyone should know this. This is my learning. This is the wisdom I would want to share.
I think what's helped me be successful is that, I'd worked for one German company before. So when the recruiter reached out and said, "Hey, I've got this German company and here's what the culture's like and all that." At first I was literally told the recruiter, I'm like, okay, one of two things. Either they don't really have a German-like culture in this particular company, or you're lying to me, one of the two. And it turned out that no, we just don't have a German type culture. And not to say that the German culture is bad, but in certain organization, it's a lot of oversight. It's a lot of policy. It's a lot of forms, policy, procedure. Doing business with inside the four walls is almost more important than anywhere else. This company has none of that. And, we've had to slowly, just for ISO certification, all those things, we've had to start to do that. But what helped me be successful is that the leaders that I work for, which was one of the owners that led the company for 20, 35 years, um, truly he gave me complete autonomy to do my job and to help grow this company over here. And even since he's been retired, the current CEO in Germany that I report to has done the same thing. He's been there, he's been supportive when needed, helped me when needed, but has never tried to step in and help me manage the market or anything like that. And there's been a big amount of trust. And so I'd say for people that are going into similar roles or getting similar opportunities, the trust, autonomy, those are the things that really drive the creative juices for people and really let them bring change in a really strong way.
That's awesome. As you think about that implication for you or teams, um, I love the concept that people with high autonomy give them autonomy. There's also I call, well, are they meeting the expectation? Am I holding them accountable for the results that I'm giving them the autonomy for? What's your approach to that balance? Because I'm with you. I go, I want to hire highly autonomous people. I want to point them in the right direction. I call it shine the flashlight on the target and then let them go. But I have to go back and go, well, are they still on target?
Yeah.
What's your view of that?
Yeah, and I think that's something that when you have a very creative culture, a very startup type culture, a lot of times they're not measuring. You don't have goal setting and you don't have all these other things, so you need to set a revenue target. You need to set maybe a profitability target. But the rest of it, when I was at Porsche, man, you had to have 5 personal goals and you had to meet with your manager and you had to have twice annual conversations and then year end. And you think of all the time you burned doing that when maybe people could have just been getting the job done better. And, so in this culture, you do risk that a little bit. And I think you have to constantly kind of check in with people. What I typically do with people is that I just have kind of health check-ins with people. So I try to have little 30-minute, and I told them, even for this year, for example, last year, I would reach out to people in just a constant rotating basis to say, love to spend 30 minutes having a cup of coffee. For me, it's a chance to learn everything that's going on in their projects. What are they frustrated with? And then for at least a few minutes, just, hey, how things going personally? What's going on with your wife? How's your dog doing? Kids. And so I think that helps a little bit. And I think if you have normal kind of check-in or health check-in meetings, I think that goes a long ways.
Awesome. Any other, I'll call it advice you would give entrepreneurs on the journey?
I think entrepreneurs, so if I was owning my own company, starting my own company, running my own company, I think you want to find people that you don't have to find yourself, because that's probably going to be a disaster, because maybe two people that are too much alike aren't going to get along. But you have to find people that have an interest in doing things similar to your goals, and have a similar approach to how you at least want to accomplish something. Otherwise, you're going to be constantly, and when I go to this institute group, there's people in there running large landscaping companies, mortgage companies, and all that. And you hear a lot of what's going on, and there's a lot of redressing and undressing in the conversation every once a month. And it's, they throw the problem out to the rest of the group to get feedback. And sometimes they've put a performing person into a role. Maybe they were good at being a lead foreman or something, but now they're not a good general manager. And they probably already know the answer themselves, but they just don't want to answer it themselves. But the minute that the whole group's like, I think you know what the answer is. It's right there. And so I guess for me, and it's easier said than done, entrepreneurs, especially if you as you hire those early phase people in your organization when you don't have the bankroll to hire a ton of people, man, you got to really make those strategic hires. They've got to be important and they've got to be impactful.
Yeah, awesome. If people want to find out more about you or follow your story or inform, where should they go?
Yeah, for Inform, it's our website, and we've got a North American one, and of course one that's broken down, but it's www.inform-software.com, and that gives you all the information, white paper case studies, all the different industries we support, and then of course, like everybody, I'm on LinkedIn. It's Justin Newell. I believe it's J Newell at LinkedIn.com, and so I'm obviously out there, and I'm always willing to connect. I've built a rather large network over the last few years. And I think it's because I'm the type of individual that when people reach out to me and need help transitioning to a new role, they're looking for something, need help with a company, like, hey, I think you're connected. Do you have any ways that you could help me maybe get an introduction? I think you have to, and I've learned this, I think, as I get a little bit older, you got to give first. Give first, and eventually it'll come full circle. Maybe not always when you expect it, but give first and always give to people. Give your time, give an ear, give a recommendation, do things for people, and yeah, it'll work out.
Awesome. Justin, I really appreciate your time today. Your story's awesome. Sounds like you've built something remarkable there at Inform North America. Thanks for your story, your candidness, your willingness at moments to be vulnerable and talk about success and failure. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the time, David. It was great talking with you today.
Thanks.